This is Chris here. Hello and welcome to all of you. Good morning. Good morning. I'll introduce myself. My name is Christopher Woodfill, or Chris Woodfill. I am currently the presenter and the moderator for this session this morning, specifically focusing on the DeafBlind and hard of hearing office, as well as the DeafBlind and hard of hearing employees in state government here in New York State government, the types of accommodations they received and how they are able to move up the state government ladder. I asked them to share some suggestions and some ideas, and potentially if people are interested in working for state government, or for you to be aware and informed about our community working in the government. The information you learned today about our office, please share with your agencies. And I think we'll go ahead and start. I plan on presenting briefly for 15 to 20 minutes about our office. I started to introduce myself, but I guess I should also say my role. I serve as the executive director of the DeafBlind and hard of hearing office. I will explain a bit, like I said, about our office for 15, 20 minutes, and then we'll move to a panel. We have 3 panelists this morning. All individuals from our DeafBlind and hard of hearing community will share their experience working in government, and we'll have some question and answer time as well. So, New York State established our office last January of 2024. So I'll say we're still sort of new here. We've been moving along, but relatively new. And we do have a short welcome video on the second slide, Kelly, that we will show that explains, it's about 2.5 minutes of who our office is and the work that we do. So we'll start off with that welcome video. Fingers crossed it works. Technology. Andy, we just have a tech issue really quick. Okay, there's coming. Or Tracy. Thank you for your patience. We hope it'll be worth it. Let's see, here we go. Fingers crossed. Would a hotspot work? We're just working on getting the internet, I guess, to connect. Looks like we're connecting. I think it's coming. Here we go. Enjoy. Welcome to the New York State DeafBlind, and Hard of Hearing office. Our mission is to support the deaf-blind, and hard of hearing communities across our state by removing barriers and ensuring equal access. We're dedicated to providing a welcoming environment where everyone is respected, affirmed, and empowered. We also aim to be your primary resource for all matters related to the communities we serve. We are a team of two, deeply committed to making a big impact. We've traveled across the state to connect directly with stakeholders and community members like you. The issues that matter most to you are central to guiding our work. The Interagency Coordinating Council, or the IAC, plays a key role in shaping our priorities. This 15-member council, which includes 8 community representatives and 7 state agency officials, works collaboratively to advocate on behalf of the deaf-blind, and hard of hearing communities regarding state services. As part of our commitment to transparency, we've published a comprehensive annual report on our website that highlights our achievements and outlines our future plans. This report offers an opportunity to see our progress and learn what lies ahead. Most importantly, we value your input. Whether you have questions, feedback, or need information about available state services, please feel free to reach out to us by using the information below. Your feedback is invaluable in helping us better serve your needs. Here's our contact info. We look forward to connecting with you. All set. Thank you. We can move ahead and go back to the slideshow. Slide 3, please. There we go. Okay, hopefully that was a good introduction to our office. I won't repeat any of the information that you just viewed there. And moving on to this slide. Okay, our office really has 3 large priorities that we focus on. I'll share just a bit of information before I explain this. When Rachel and I started last year, we were inundated with a variety of topics and just information requests from the community. And we had to take a step back and look at the big picture of the type of information we continue to talk about and discuss with the community. We noticed patterns and categories, and we recognized that we could group them into categories. The first is access to language. You might wonder what that is, but the deaf community uses American Sign Language primarily to communicate. Some of them do use English, but most of them communicate in American Sign Language. For the deaf-blind community, that language is varied. Some use protactile sign language or tactile sign language. Others use English with amplified sound if they're hard of hearing with visual loss. And the hard of hearing community simply generally relies on equipment such as assisted listening devices, captioning as well, lifetime captioning, we call CART captioning. So they tend to focus on the English language. So we have 3 distinct communities, and they each have their own language preferences. We secondly recognized the how, which is access to communication. The deaf community tends to use interpreters to access their language, and they communicate through interpreters. The deaf-blind, again, uses interpreters, often tactile interpreters or pro-tactile interpreters. They also may use equipment such as refreshable braille or assisted listening devices. And the hard of hearing community often relies on equipment such as maybe a hearing loop that connects with their hearing aids, or the use of lifetime captions. Some of them may use interpreting services, in fact, as well. And lastly, the why. So we need access to a language and communication for information. If we have checked the boxes of language and communication, we can have access to information. But without providing language and communication, our community is simply left in the dark. They don't have access to the information and society around them, to the world that they live in. They are disconnected from the world, in fact, without the language and communication access. Our community also doesn't have access to state services without language and communication access. They don't have access to being informed that there are state benefits and services that are available to them. Our community can be isolated and can be disconnected from the hearing society at large. So again, we have our what, our how, and our why. Go ahead to the next slide. I don't have time, unfortunately, to elaborate on all the stakeholders that we have connections with, but I thought I would list out some here. We have 7 state agencies that are represented on our council. We communicate with all of the agencies. I won't mention all of their names, but we also communicate with other state agencies who are not sitting on our council, and there's a long list of state agencies. If you are unaware, we have 96 state agencies, in fact, and we collaborate and partner with potentially we could partner with all of them, so many of them to connect with. But we want to make sure that access is there for our community members. I see the numbering is off here. That was a transitioning to a Word document. Sorry about that. But information within the executive chamber, we have lots of partners here within chamber. Our office is within the executive chamber, so we have lots of partners within internal government and the staff that we work with there to support the access that they work with to their state agencies and who they represent in state government. We also have city government. We have New York City government, and we have Rochester, because that is a large population of our community who lives in this state. So I had mentioned that here as well. We have a plethora of organizations that we work with as well, who connect with state services. We have the Hearing Loss Association of America, New York chapter. We also, there's lots of organizations within the state to support the deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing that we connect with regularly as well. And lots of community members reach out to our office regularly. So we get connected all over the state at various levels. And we'll go to the next slide. I wanted to talk specifically about what our office does pertaining to employment. We don't focus solely on employment. We focus on healthcare and education, interpreter access, lots of things on our list that we focus on, but employment is certainly one of them. Our governor, Governor Hochul, has 2 specific executive orders that focus on employment. Executive Order 31 is the State as a Model Employer, or SAME. We want to make sure that deaf and deaf-blind and hard of hearing New Yorkers are interested and want to work and come to work with us in state government. Jobs are open and available, and we want to make sure that that is advertised to our community. As well as Executive Order 40, which is called Employment First, and it is a call to action for private businesses and partners to also hire people with disabilities. Other things that I will mention in the rest of my presentation are often connected with EO 31 and 40, and I can make that connection, but likely you'll see that as well. We have some federal partners as well, the State Exchange on Employment and Disabilities, which we call SEED, S-E-E-D, and Cornell's Yang Tan Institute. We often get connected and learn about what other states are doing. For people with disabilities or for our community, we attend monthly meetings to learn and to collaborate, info share, and often want to apply it here to New York State. Yeah, I see the numbers are off here as well. That's throwing me off. Sorry about that. When documents get transitioned over, they don't always transition correctly. Okay, let's see. We have worked with our Office of Employee Relations, specifically for state employees, as well as for other, mandates and initiatives. But we require, of course, mandated trainings every year for state employees that they have to take. And we've recognized that all of those trainings are in spoken English. So we have requested them to produce a translated version in American Sign Language. So our deaf state employees don't have to simply rely on captioning and read the captions for their trainings, but they can, in fact, access it in a visual language, their primary preferred language, which is very nice for our deaf state employees to have the choice of which type of language that they would prefer. For the deaf-blind community, the trainings also are provided a transcript that they can access, which means they would often connect with their refreshable Braille displays to access their state training. So without a transcript, they wouldn't be able to gain access to this information that's mandated of them. There's a variety of ways that people can access the information. It's really about their preferred language. And each community, as I mentioned, prefers their own English or ASL, and we want to make sure that the tools are available and ready for them. I think I mentioned all those. We can move on to the next slide here. They seemed a bit out of order to me, so sorry about that. And maybe something was on the last slide, but I did want to mention about reasonable accommodations. That is something that we have worked with as well. The former policy, believe it or not, had 7 steps of approvals to receive an accommodation. That is really ridiculous and unnecessary. That's a hurdle. That's a barrier for our employees to receive accommodations. And it could take weeks to receive approval for one accommodation. We often request interpreting services for meetings, and it's unnecessary to have that many layers of approval. So we have worked with the Office of Employee Relations to simplify the process and to reduce the number of steps for accommodations. And we've worked together with them. And it doesn't apply just to the deaf, blind, and hard of hearing communities, but any individual within state government who has a disability, anytime you're requesting any reasonable accommodation. So working with them really benefited our whole community in the disability community, which was a great success there. We've also worked with the Office of Civil Service We read some job descriptions for interpreters here in the state and noticed they were antiquated. Really, I think these were written 30, 40 years ago, and they didn't really apply. And I'll just give you an example. The actual job description for an interpreter was not called an interpreter. They were called a manual communicator, which, if you've heard that terminology, was used quite a while ago. We prefer to call it sign language or American Sign Language. We don't call it manual communication. That's old, outdated terminology and needs to be updated to reflect our current language use in our field. I won't give you all the examples, but that's just one example of how we have updated the civil service interpreter job positions here. We want to make sure that that terminology of yesteryear is no longer used. And let's see here. So many state agencies, and maybe some of you are represented here in this audience today, but have reached out to our office because they have maybe a job seeker, a job applicant who is deaf and requesting accommodations maybe for an interview. And they have asked for, what are the steps to take? What are the things we need to do? And once the person is hired, then how do we move forward with supporting them properly? So they have reached out to Rachel and I, and we have developed 2 best practice documents. One is for best practices working with an ASL interpreter, as well as best practices for working with a CART captioner. And we plan on continuing to develop best practice documents. As we have seen that state agencies are utilizing our office as a resource to provide support to them, and we're happy to do so. But rather than having one-off conversations with this agency and that agency, it's better to make a document that they all can utilize that will be a resource to anyone who needs it in the future. Some agencies have also reached out to us with requesting information about how do we promote our deaf employees? How can they be promoted to become a supervisor? What resources can we use to support them in their career journey and their career ladder? They can't speak. So how can they support their staff? How can they, what resources are available to them? Which has been interesting to support agencies in different capacities, a variety of questions that they've had working with employees and the public, and to make sure that, in an effort for them to we don't want to be redundant in our messages over and over to the different agencies. It's better for us to develop documents that they can utilize as a resource from here on out. So we have resources, they're available, and our state employment, we have 130,000 state employees and 96 agencies who have continued to reach out to us. We are very happy to continue to support them, and hopefully Rachel and I will continue to draft more documents and videos, trainings that we can share with our HR offices for our deaf employees. At the same time, the state agencies have reached out to us about their employees. Often deaf employees of the state have reached out to us as well, asking about the accommodation process. And I asked for this and I didn't get that. I need more support. Also, we have individuals who are not state employees, but struggle just getting a job and looking for more support to help find a place of employment. So we are here in a variety of ways to support our community and state agencies with employment. So we have noticed within state government and within the private sector as well. And I'll give you an example. We had an individual who was on a work crew. It was a private business. He was not a state employee, but he was working construction on a road crew. And he was not fluent in written English. He could not read and write well, but he could communicate very well in sign language, and he was a great employee. And we did hear how he was working with his team and his supervisor, they reached out to us, and we gave them some communication access ideas. We talked about different apps and features where his supervisor could communicate with him and support him, move the logs from here to there, use this type of equipment. And we also talked about communication boards and just different visualizations that would help rather than relying on the English language. And we often think outside the box and try to customize supports for individuals if they are not fluent in English and do need support in their place of employment. So that supervisor really, they didn't know sign language. They weren't fluent in our language. So we wanted to make sure that we supported them hiring this deaf person, which was a great success for us. But this overall is the work we do on employment and really supporting the system here in state government to make it simpler and easier for people to receive accommodations. As I mentioned, those accommodation approvals were quite lengthy in the past and took quite some time, but now we've simplified that process, and our goal is to continue to improve the system. I think that might be it. You can go to the next slide. Yes. So if our contact information is here, if you all have challenges or barriers here in government, please reach out to us. We are here to support. Our QR code is there to connect to our website, and you can take a look at more of the work that we're doing. I think, that should be it. But I'm going to ask our panelists to come on up now, get in the hot seat, if you don't mind. And I see we have one of our panelists who's wasn't able to make it, but we have somebody who's stepped in here to fill their place. Making sure we're all set, we all have access, and we're good to go. Our panelists ready? Can all see me? Good? Okay, great. Wonderful. I'm going to stand here and I'll ask the questions from here if that's okay. And my interpreters are all set? Great. Just making sure all have access. So I will start off with, here we have our state employees. We have asked different state employees to come to discuss their experience. We have myself, I'm deafblind. I identify as deafblind. I maybe even will answer some of the questions, but we have deaf and hard of hearing people on our panel this morning. I did prepare a list of questions that I sent them in advance. Well, let's go ahead and start. So I'll ask you a question, and if you don't mind standing up to make sure we have visual access in the room for the audience, that would be appreciated. The first question on my list here, if you don't mind briefly stating your name, sharing what agency you are employed at, and what your role is there. Go ahead, Brenda. Yeah, if you don't mind starting.
I am Brenda Rotolo-Suki. I work for the New York State Education Department, Office of Special Education SFBR. I am a Ticket to Work coordinator for SFBR. I also have many other roles and responsibilities. My primary is Ticket to Work.
Thank you, Brenda. Next.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nathan Scott. My sign name is this, an N on my chin. I work for the Department of Transportation, DOT. That's on Wolf Road over in Colony, New York. As for my role and what I do there, I am an associate budget analyst. I've been there about 5 years, and I've worked in a variety of roles. I work in different programs, and I really enjoy the work that I do there. So,
thanks so much, Nathan. Go ahead. Next, Ben.
Hello, I'm Ben Papa, name sign Ben. My SimCom ability go down overnight and tired, so I would talk mostly. I work for Executive Chamber in the Chief Disability Office, and I've been there for about 3.5 years. I work on issues like housing, education, transportation, accessibility, and policy change for all disabilities. And I'm proud to work with Chris and Rachel in the DeafBlind and hard of hearing office as well.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you so much. Okay, we'll jump right to question 2. If you can share about your, let me make sure I have it right here. Yes, if you don't mind sharing your employment history and here within state government and how you've moved along your journey, as also, if you don't mind sharing information on what you did before coming to state government. Go ahead, Brenda.
I had an interesting journey. I started out with Independent Living Center at the Hudson Valley as a supported deployment advocate. That was a grant. So at the end of the second year grant, it's only 2 years, by the way. At the end of the second year's grant, I was approached by somebody named Toby Bethry. Some of you may know her, some of you may not know her. She contacted my supervisor at the Independent Living saying, we're looking for that person working for this state, especially in Vesson. We were known as Vesson, Vocational Educational Services for individuals with disability. Mouthful. Anyway, I was asked to take the job of a counselor who was leaving. Now, mind you, I don't have any education in VR. So I was asked to go to school and take courses, learn about VR 101. Okay, so I accepted the job. I started in December 5th, 2002. I was a nervous wreck because I was giving caseload and I'm looking at it. I'm like, I don't know what the heck I'm looking at. But I got some help from my colleagues, what to do, what not to do. And I had a team of people who were awesome. They taught me everything I need to know to move the cases along, help people become employed. Fast forward 2, 4, 5 years, 2007, there was an opportunity for promotion for a senior vocational rehabilitation counselor at central office. Now, mind me, I'm like, what's central office? I don't want to, well, okay, I'll go for an interview. They're looking for someone to be a senior vocational rehabilitation counselor in the training unit. Again, what do I know about training? So I applied for it, and I surprisingly was accepted. So I took a job. Yeah, and then 2007, moving forward, I was transitioning to different task projects. And now it's been, 23 years in the state service. And now I'm a ticket to work coordinator, which is my favorite job. I love, helping people find jobs through the Social Security program. Let's see, what other thing? That's what I have for number 2, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Brenda. Thank you. And we'll move on to Nathan.
All right. So I grew up in this area. I graduated high school and decided to go to college at the Rochester Institute of Technology, RIT, majoring in math and finance. When I graduated from college, I, of course, started looking for work, and my first job was for a federal agency under the Department of Defense that was in Rome, New York. It's just about an hour and a half from here, not far. I worked as a financial analyst for about 3 years there. During that time, I really, kind of became jaded with the job. I decided that I wanted something new and different, a new opportunity and a new challenge. At the time, my mom worked for the state. She actually had for many years. So she suggested that I apply for a state job at another location. So I went ahead and sent in my applications. I took the PCO exam, which is the Professional Credential Opportunity Civil Service exam. I passed my exam and was able to get an interview offer, of several, in fact. I did get an offer from DOT, which I accepted. That was in 2019. So a few years went by, and I decided that I was curious to try something different and new, something that I had never experienced before, and I had never lived outside of New York State. So I decided to apply for a job in South Carolina. I did, again, interview and accepted a job for a private agency. I was a contractor in Charlotte, South Carolina. So I stayed there for about 1 year, got a new experience, but I really did miss my family. I missed the area, so I decided to come back. And I was lucky that DOT was willing to take me back in the same position I had previously with the same team and everything. That worked out really well, and I felt very fortunate. So now I've been here since 2023. So total, I've worked with DOT for about 5 years. Really, it's been an amazing experience.
Hi, this is Ben speaking. I started with the Chief Disability Office about 3 years ago in June of 2022. I am an attorney, and before that, I was doing client-specific work and some litigation work with Disability Rights New York, which is a nonprofit that handles cases for New Yorkers with disability on a wide range of issues. And then before that, my father and I started a engineering business when I was in law school. So Rachel was actually my interpreter during some of that and watched me, briefly fall asleep in the very early morning classes because we were pulling all-nighters at work. Before that, I have been a camp counselor, a janitor, taking care of my grandmother, and a few other odd jobs here and there. I think I worked at Home Depot for one Christmas season, too. Tying trees on cars is actually kind of fun. And one thing I want to emphasize about the state is that generally the state has been quite welcoming to me and my particular needs. I will say that the needs of meetings that involve people both in person and far away has been complicated to bridge. For example, Zoom, which is, I believe right now, the most accessible for me and maybe other people here, meeting platforms, doesn't have an ability to turn on captions for everybody who hosts the meeting. So when I started in June 2022, it took 6 months for everybody to be able to track down each computer, each laptop, and each phone that somebody was using to start a meeting, because we didn't have a list of all the devices and we didn't have people pulling them into the computer support to be able to turn them on. So for that 6 months, I did the best I could, and it was a collaborative project between computer support, my boss, and other people to get this done. But it did take a while, and it was a bit frustrating at times, but we did get there. All right.
Remain standing, Ben. I do have a follow-up question for you, since you're, making remarks right now. Would you mind sharing a fun fact about yourself that kind of shocked me, but it was good, about MMA fighting? You want to explain about that?
So I think 12 or 13 years, I did jiu-jitsu and MMA, and I ended up writing for a website, being sort of like a beat reporter while I was going to law school. Got to go around a few different places and meet professionals and do some grappling with them, and they are way, way, way better than I could ever dream of being. Professional athletes are no joke.
Thanks so much for sharing that. Okay, looking at my list of questions here. Sorry, I need to make sure I have enough light on the page to see the question. Okay, next question. This question is a bit more complicated, but I think it's an important question to ask. I am asking the question, how do you identify yourself? And meaning specifically, what intersectionalities do you connect with? If somebody asked you, who are you? How do you label or identify yourself? That's my next question. Brenda, you want to go ahead and start?
I identify myself as hard of hearing. And then eventually I lost a lot of hearing and became deaf. I wear cochlear implants. I learned sign language, so I'm identified as hard of hearing / deaf. It all depends on who I'm working with, who I'm talking to. If I'm with the hearing people, I talk to them. If I was a deaf person, I sign. So I have multiple modalities to work with, like different communication skills. So I identify myself as hard of hearing. For the deaf people, I'm deaf. So you want me to explain my journey or identity? Okay, cool. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. I was born with hearing loss. I wore hearing aids to learn to speak using the mirror with a speech therapist. I had to learn how to articulate words, read and write English, all the way to school. And finally, special education came into my life. I'm like, okay, there's reasonable accommodation. Well, at the time, I didn't know sign language. There was an interpreter in front of me. I didn't understand what the heck this person was saying to me. There's a lot of hearing gestures like, this person's obviously not Italian, but okay, let's start from there. And then I eventually wanted to learn sign language, so I learned sign language. Now, understand, coming from old school Italian, we use our hands a lot. So it's kind of like, take it for granted. My grandparents did call me special because I was different from them. But I had a hot moment with them. When they got older, they couldn't hear. I'm like, oh, so who's special now? Say what? Okay, so we're both the same. We're no different. So labeling is not something we do in the family. We just accept us as we are, with or without hearing. So my journey has been very interesting and it's been challenging some days. Some days I talk to a deaf person, I'm like, I don't know what this person is saying to me. I go slow down, explain to me what you're saying, because I learned that sign language is different in each state, each part of the state. Like Buffalo has their sign, Rochester, New York, Albany, everybody gets different. I'm like, okay. So I'm willing to learn, and I want to because I want to be understood. I want them to be understood. So that was my journey. So I'm still learning to this day. I never stop learning.
Thank you, Brenda. Thank you so much for sharing that journey. Nathan?
So, as far as my journey with my deaf identity, I think it's a bit unique. So, I was actually born in South Korea. I was adopted at 4 months old, so I was still very, very little. I was just a baby, came to America with my adopted parents. My family at the time didn't know that I was deaf and didn't find out until I was about 2 years old, when they started to notice that I wasn't responding to their verbal cues. So they did bring me in for an exam where I was diagnosed as being deaf in both ears, bilaterally deaf at the age of 2. And at that time, my parents went ahead and put me in speech therapy, got me a social worker, all of the resources that would help me out. I did start learning sign language and spoken English at the same time. When I got older and it was time for me to go to school, I was mainstreamed in a BOCES program in Guilderland. So when I graduated high school, again, I went to RIT for college. Growing up, I, typically used English most of the time. I did sign with my deaf friends when I was communicating with them, but really, when I was with hearing people, I used spoken English rather than signing. But when I went to RIT, that was my first exposure to a large deaf community where ASL was the primary language. And I was there for 4 years. And during that time, it really changed my identity really evolved and changed. And I felt that I really became my true deaf self, that I wasn't shy of it, that I got to meet people who were the same as me, who communicated like I did. We could have fun with each other using ASL. And that was a new experience. And like Brenda, I kind of code switch depending on who I'm communicating with. I have the ability to do that because of my experience growing up. I do have hearing aids, but in 2018, I had decided I was going to get a cochlear implant. So after about 1 year of learning to use the implant and becoming accustomed to it, to be honest, it really was a struggle. It was really tough. And then when COVID hit and everybody was home, I just took it off and I got used to just leaving it and not using it. And even when I started going out with friends again, I was used to not having it on and I just kind of left it. When things kind of went back to normal, I decided that I wasn't going to use my implant so much anymore. I was going to communicate using American Sign Language. And at my job, I'm lucky that I have interpreters with me most of the time, Monday through Friday, so that I'm able to interact with my hearing colleagues on a regular basis using my interpreters. However, at home with my family, I do tend to use English. My family knows some basic signs that they learned with me as I was growing up, but as far as our typical communication, we usually speak English. I am lucky, though, that I was provided, again, different modalities for communicating. And as far as my identity, I really feel like I'm kind of in the middle of two worlds. That I grew up with my hearing family and a hearing community, the only deaf person, and then went to college and made a lot of deaf friends and became more involved in the deaf community. So I really live in both worlds. And so that's how I identify too. So that's my journey in a nutshell.
Thanks so much, Nathan. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Ben.
When I think of myself, I think first that I'm just Ben. That means I was born in Nepal and my parents found out I was deaf when I was about 1 year old. I wasn't turning around when someone spoke behind me. Current working theory is that I got sick enough as a baby that it damaged my hearing. We moved to the United States when I was past 2 years old. And I was born in 85, so this is 1988 or so. And my parents put in a lot of work for speech, for reading. I was reading very early, and then experimental programs were done to teach me lip reading, sign, how to use hearing aids. And then I went to a deaf school for maybe 6 months. And then the ADA was passed. And at that point, my parents decided to mainstream me, which was an interesting journey. But throughout that time, I just thought of myself as just Ben. What did being deaf mean? I was too young really to fully understand. I grew up kind of not quite alone, but there weren't really any other deaf people my age. There wasn't really a culture for me to connect to. And so that has come later in life. And so I maybe went from like lowercase d deaf to maybe uppercase D sometime after college or so, when I started to encounter more and more deaf people. And my parents have done a great job of supporting me, my family as well. And we kept our Nepali culture very much alive. There were way too many holidays, but we go and we eat, we gather, and I have over the last few years really started putting more time into figuring out what being deaf means for me. And as Nathan and Brenda and Chris mentioned, it's really kind of a journey unique to each of us. And there's maybe no final answer at any given time. This identity evolves with us.
Wow, thanks so much, Ben. That's great. That's great. Okay, just checking in on our time here. Good. We have plenty of time. That's great. Okay, moving along. The question is, within state government where you're currently working, I'm wondering what each of you could share, and I know you're each going to have potentially different answers, and some of it has been mentioned, but it's worth mentioning again. What barriers have you had and struggles you've had working within the state? I'm wondering about that, as well as what I mentioned before in my presentation, access to language, access to communication, and access to information. And how are all of those related to the barriers you faced? I don't mind if somebody different wants to start, but Brenda, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay, barriers. Wow. My barrier is not being heard and understood. Okay. I'm Italian. I need to use my hand. Okay, so working for the state, the barriers I can think of is sign language interpreter, captioning, a cart. But understand, access VR, the accommodations were there. I just need to know how to ask for them. I can't say it was easy for me, it's not, but it was easy. Once I understood how to ask for accommodation, it just came easy. All I have to do is say something. I tell my supervisor I need captioning phone. All right, you know what? It was approved because it was expected. Our agency provides services to people with disabilities, so the expectation was already there. So all I had to do was ask for it. Well, I didn't know. I thought there were steps, like Chris was talking about, steps of approval. Back in the day, yeah, there was a struggle to get approved. Now it's automatic. It was no assumption. You asked for it, you got it. As far as working with other colleagues who are non-deaf, deafblind, or hard of hearing, it's a challenge for them because they need to be taught and trained how to communicate with deafblind, and hard of hearing. I understand they're not exposed. We have to train them. This is why Julia Rue, some of you may know her, some of you may not know her. Her and I, with Linda Schramm's help, we developed a task force. So we compile all kinds of services, resources, information for the deaf, blind, and hard of hearing, and hearing staff as well. It's also for them, it's not just for us. We're fortunate to have deaf counselors who are deaf, who knows how to communicate with deaf people. But also, it's the other way around. We have to teach hearing people how to communicate with us and how they serve deaf population. So the barrier is there, but once you know how, you can overcome that. It's great. We have it. If you ask for a card, we accommodate. If you ask for an interpreter, it's accommodated. Anything you need to do your job is provided for. Okay?
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. My primary barrier in my role at DOT from a communications perspective is language access, I would say. Making sure that I can understand my colleagues while I'm at work. I think it really goes back to educating people in general, right? Trying to help people become more aware of my deafness and what exactly that means. But looking back, I really do feel so fortunate because growing up, my family really, really did support me. They encouraged me by telling people and educating them when they misunderstood who I was or didn't accept me for who I was. At school, I had several resources that were provided that taught me how to request interpreters, how to request captions and accommodations for myself. And then when I went to RIT, I, of course, learned a lot more about how to request those accommodations. As far as my first job with the federal government, I was very lucky because they had staff interpreters already there and ready to go who worked for them. So all I needed to do was call them. You know, they were kind of on call anytime a meeting came up or I needed to communicate with a hearing colleague. So I was very fortunate in that way. When I started working for DOT in 2019, I did realize that I had to do a lot more educating HR, educating my supervisor, explaining why I needed interpreters, why that was important for me to be able to do my job successfully. My job involves a lot of different program management. So I work with a variety of different people who I have to be able to contact when I need to and communicate with them. And that is the case every day. So I really had to, again, do that educating for my team, for the HR department, because they just didn't know what they didn't know. So I had to explain how to request an interpreter, why that was important, what that process looked like, and why it was beneficial for all of us. And of course, it didn't happen overnight. It was a process that took months of education and conversation. But I'm really lucky because most of my colleagues at this point understand my communication needs, and I can be honest with them and let them know exactly what those are and why I need them. They also have seen the benefits of me receiving those accommodations. I can communicate with my colleagues clearly when I need to, and they have seen the results of that, and they understand why it is essential to have interpreters and other resources that I need to do my job well. So really for me, I would say that's it. That's the biggest barrier, is just educating people about my needs and why those needs are important. So.
Great. Thank you, Nathan. Go ahead, Ben.
Do you know how many people try to whisper in a deaf person's ears? It actually just happened maybe like 20 minutes ago for me. I am 90 to 95% deaf. Hearing aids have really helped me get to normality. But in addition to what Brenda and Nathan have said, I think the thing that really makes a difference is, for me, I am used to advocating for myself. I'm used to saying, I need this. Please, can we do this? You know, can we change this way that this is being done? But it's such a relief when somebody just plans it for you and they don't even ask you, because it's almost like this is not a struggle. Somebody has taken the forethought, the consideration to include me. You know, maybe you can compare it to somebody had put your favorite foods here after a long day when you get home. Somebody had made the bed, you know, the kind of care that we give to each other. And building that kind of a system does require, you know, communicating with people, trying to get them on your side and hoping that they're open to that, delivering that kind of care, because we can deliver it back. And that is a very nice thing to have, but maybe not always present. And there are a few different ways that people can improve that by planning things out over a longer period of time. Instead of doing things, you know, in one day's worth of time, when you can, maybe add an extra week, extra month, figuring out what foods are safe. Because at a basic level, we want to be able to eat, we want to be able to see if we can, we want to be able to hear, and we want to be able to get in the door, all these other things. Sort of like we're throwing a big party. You want to know where to park, who's going to be there, what kind of music is being played, if that's important to you, and you know, maybe even like who's cooking, because somebody could be a better cook than others. So here for state work, I can't really do like the private, quiet conversations in a noisy environment. I can't do it. I have to have like a direct one-on-one conversation. I cannot do speakerphones because my hearing aids are already a speaker, so I'm kind of like listening to a sound through a speaker, which starts getting more and more distant from what an actual sound is like. If there are people who are constantly moving their heads or moving around, moving locations, that can be challenging to initially get used to. And I think the nicest thing that has happened so far is at one point I was having a tough time during the meeting because the captions weren't really working, and my boss just said, wait, you know what, hold on, and then booked it down the hall to computer support and said, we need to get band captions now. And I mean, it took a while to do that, but the fact that she just did that was really heartwarming, was really affirming. It made me feel like I belonged.
Thank you so much. I know time is a bit running out, so I wanted to wrap up into a last question here for you. And then we'll allow the audience to ask some questions as well. I'm wondering, do you have any advice that you could give and share for people here in this audience, in this space? Potentially, we have some state agency leaders that are in our audience today. So I'm wondering, what advice would you give them to improve access to the deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing community, as well as what advice would you give potentially for somebody who is interested in state government and working here with us in the state? So 2 pieces of advice. Go ahead, Brenda.
My advice? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Thank you. Okay, my advice for the first question. For those of you who are not familiar with working with the deafblind, hard of hearing, for those people who are disabled, not disabled, but with a hearing impairment, need to speak up and tell the employer what they need. The employer have option to reach out either to AccessVR or Office of Disability or any other agency that knows about how to provide reasonable accommodation. Speak up. If you don't speak up, we don't know. Never assume. Always ask and speak up. You have to be a self-advocate. If you're afraid to ask because of whatever reason, talk to your colleague. Your colleague probably will speak up for you. Now, coming from the agency I work for, we're very open. We are always reaching out to make sure all of us could do our jobs and make sure reasonable accommodations were met. Now, the second question was, how do we get people employed in this state? Well, in my office, we have, I think, a recruitment team where if you know somebody who's looking to apply, they could go to the recruitment. For those who are deafblind, hard of hearing, you could reach out to me or access via our website and say, hey, I'm interested in applying. Yeah, we have to go through the steps, through the civil service. You have to be, you have to apply, that's for sure. But we do have a contact person in the office who will be more than happy to walk you through the steps necessary to get you approved and eligible, if you have to be made eligible, by the way. Again, the steps. We will walk you through the steps. If you met the criteria, you become employed. It's not overnight. It does take time. We need a lot of patience. But again, if you are deafblind, hard of hearing, reach out to AccessVR, and we will walk you through the steps to get employed. It used to be civil service. It still is. We still have to work with them.
Great. Thanks, Brenda. I hope people are going to reach out to you. Okay. Yeah, I do hope people do reach out to you for employment. Nathan, go ahead.
Sure. My advice for anyone here who is looking to hire deaf, deafblind, or hard of hearing individuals, I think Ben and Brenda both mentioned this, but keep an open mind. Everyone really is unique and has different experience, different skills, different needs. So really take the time to learn from them, to learn about them, to learn about the different resources that are available to them. Just keep that open mind and take the time to sit down with individuals too and listen to what it is they tell you that they need. Be willing to work with them. I think my second piece of advice would be for deaf and deafblind and hard of hearing people themselves who would like to work for state government. Really, don't be afraid to advocate for yourself. If you need something, speak up. Don't feel nervous or intimidated. Just do it. People, again, don't know what they don't know. It doesn't mean that they're bad people. It doesn't mean that they're unkind. They just are unaware. They're just not educated about your needs. So take the opportunity to educate them. And it'll benefit not only you, but it will benefit them as well, because they might be able to go on to hire other people like you in the future, right? So start there. Start with exposure to the unique information that we have, and it goes both ways. The agency isn't the only one responsible. You are as well to communicate and advocate for yourself. So that's my advice.
Thanks, Nathan. Wow. Again, call to come join the state government workforce. Thanks so much. Okay, Ben.
These are really good pieces of advice here. I think I'm going to add on to it in a different way. We are all coming to our places of employment from our lives, which are unique, have different blends of experiences, and it's rather important to be welcoming to everyone in all the forms that we come, because some of us do have trauma. The deaf community especially has been particularly treated as though they needed reform, as though sign had been good, bad, and cycles, and at times isolated or forcibly mainstreamed, not really given a lot of choice. And that goes for the deafblind, goes for the hard of hearing too. The dinner table syndrome, you might want to look that up if you go home, where you're at a dinner table, everyone's having a conversation, you're not being included. It doesn't mean that we each or you have a responsibility to go out and cure everything. Stay in your general lanes, but if your lanes include welcoming somebody, say yes to that more often. And that goes for other types of disabilities, it goes for other communities. We can do a lot if we are welcoming and we build that again and again, and maybe a world that has decided to not be welcoming to certain communities and certain people. It's really a strong statement when you can welcome somebody and they're happy and they want to be there with you. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate that. Thank all of you, Brenda, Nathan, and Ben, for your responses. This has been great. Now I'm going to open it up to the audience and see if we have any questions from the audience, and we have interpreters available as well. So we will have, just if I'm making sure we have microphone as well. Ryan, okay, go ahead. I see your hand raised.
This is Ryan from the Helen Keller National Center. Thank you so much to each of you panelists. I have a question for you. Actually, it would apply to all three of you, and also directly to Chris, because we can also share from the deafblind perspective on this exact topic. So I'm curious, in regards to your journey and what that has looked like, from the very beginning steps of you as a new worker, what did your first idea of accommodation look like, as opposed to where you are now? Because you all have moved along in your journey and in your promotion, shall we say. How has that looked in terms of the changes and evolutions of accommodations for yourselves to make you become successful in your workplace?
I think this is Chris here. I think I'd like to answer that question first, and then we can move on to the panelists if that's all right with you. Okay, great. So I have really, in fact, two journeys. I identified initially as a deaf individual, a culturally deaf individual. I have what's called Usher syndrome, which means I was born deaf, and then I have progressively lost my vision to become a blind person as well. So I'm deaf-blind. So I have that journey, that life experience. Again, when you're a deaf person, you have specific types of accommodations. And as I continued to lose my vision, my accommodation request and needs as a deaf-blind person did change, in fact. So I needed more and different types of accommodations. So I also had another journey because I used to work more on the front line with people, more of a bottom starting entry level position. And then I continued to move along in my career. I became a supervisor. I became an associate executive director and now working in state government, which has been a journey. And when you start at entry level, and at that time I was just simply deaf. If I'm, with other deaf people, I use sign language. If I'm within a hearing community, I work with an interpreter. But now with deaf-blind, I'm the only deaf-blind person working in a place of all hearing people. So the types of accommodations I need are different than I worked before, primarily with only deaf or deaf-blind people. So my journey in career has changed. My accommodations have changed. And so it's two different tracks I'm experiencing at the same time. I need different types of equipment. I personally use Zoom text. I use color contrast, enlarged fonts so I can see better. When I was younger, I didn't need that type of an accommodation. But now my needs have changed, and I use different types of accommodations based on those needs. Sometimes I use tactile American Sign Language if I'm very close to a person. If I'm further away, I can see the interpreter fine, but as I get closer, I need much different types of communication, tactile American Sign Language. I also have somebody providing what's called haptic communication standing behind me. You see an interpreter. She's providing environmental information. If I don't have haptic information, I don't know what's happening in my environment. So it's an increased accommodation, primarily. Before I just used American Sign Language. And I was a teacher for 13 years in a school for the deaf. I worked with deaf students, and I had lots of deaf colleagues because I was at a school for the deaf. Everyone used sign language to communicate. And at that time, my supervisor, my superintendent of the school were deaf, and everyone just used ASL. That was my world. I didn't need an interpreter at that time. But when I moved to Helen Keller National Center, where I was employed, and I moved along in my journey, my career journey, I had a hearing supervisor for the first time, and I needed to communicate with them in a different way. Now working in state government, there's absolutely no one else that signs with me. Well, I shouldn't say that. Ben is a colleague of mine. So Ben and I, and of course, Rachel, the three of us work together. But there's 130 people who work for the governor. We are the only people who use American Sign Language, and none of them even know about the deaf community. So a lot of education there. Very different world experience for me now working in a primarily hearing world. But that's a part of my journey. I hope I answered your question, Ryan. Anybody else on the panel would like to answer that question?
I got it.
I got the mic this time, Bill.
I can remember.
I can remember.
Okay. My journey was rocky. There's a lot of stuff learning how to communicate effectively. One is understanding people who mumble. I know a lot of hearing people don't realize that. It's not that deaf people have a hard time hearing them, it's them not articulating the word correctly. So I learned it's not me, it's them too. So it's a two-way street. Going from my education to college through work journey, it's been like a roller coaster for me. Some days you're dealing with people who are understandable, like they understand what the situation is, they're more empathetic, if you will. Other people go, what is your problem? And you look at them like, oh my God, I have to deal with you. So I had to learn to adapt because these people are not exposed. They don't know. So my journey at that time was like really rough. It's like uphill battle. So through from toddler to adult to this day and continuously on until I pass, it will always be an interesting journey, up and down. Working with people, they're all different kinds of people, different kinds of needs, different kinds of a communication modality. Some people have an accent, some people have palsy. You just have to learn to adapt. That's the only way we can survive through this, is to learn to adapt and accommodate.
Anybody else, Nathan? Anybody else want to answer? Yeah, go ahead, Nathan.
Sure. I think I can share my personal experience with accommodations during the time that I was employed with the state government, or the time that I have been employed with state government. So I've always used interpreters for communication, even if I am able to speak for myself using English. It just doesn't necessarily mean we can all understand each other well. So I do choose to use interpreters. I've been in situations where I've met many wonderful interpreters. They've interpreted for meetings, at my job, for trainings, for interviews, you name it, they've been there. And again, that means that I've met a lot of them. And I've realized that sometimes it's challenging for me to develop a sort of continuity with interpreters because so many come and go. So what I've learned through my experience working, again, for state government is that I really need to communicate well with my supervisor to make my needs clear. To say, it'd be nice if I could have ongoing interpreters who are here continually instead of interpreters who come kind of in and out when they're available. So right now, I'm very lucky because I have a team of 2 wonderfully skilled interpreters who are here or who are at work with me and who have been able to develop an understanding of the content at my workplace. They're both really a part of our team at this point because they've been with us for quite some time. And it's been really wonderful and beneficial for me to have ongoing designated interpreters in that way.
Thanks so much, Ben. You'd like to share as well?
Going back to Ryan's question for me, I'm going to restate it and talk about how my support needs have evolved. When I was, working with the camp counselor or whatever, I didn't really think that each word mattered. So I just kind of did my best as I could and didn't ask for interpreters, didn't ask for captions, didn't do any of that. And I mostly got by because this was a job that I could easily understand, do, all that kind of stuff. And then as I started moving up the ladder, a few things started to develop over time. One, I became visually hypervigilant. I very much track with my eyes what is happening all around me at pretty much all times. It's just automatically on. I will see body language details. I will see all of these things because this is me attempting to gap fill, to pick up the pieces that I am not getting through hearing. And I still miss things. I used to do a ton of gap filling, I still do, but that has been supplemented by captions, by using interpreters and working with the interpreters because they're human beings who adjust to me as I adjust to them as well. But one additional detail that I didn't fully get until a few years ago is that as you move up in an organization, oftentimes you have to adjust to the culture. The culture at the lower level is different than the culture of the upper level, and little details start really mattering more and more, like having to check with this person. Did this person say this? Are we being asked to do a different thing? All of that kind of stuff, that cross-checking, that higher level of communication, the full understanding of all the details became much more important. And so that's when I started having to really plan for interpreters, for captions, for having that after meeting, like it can be a quick 2-minute, hey, did I get this right? Or are we sure we want to do this? That kind of thing. And that, more than anything, has made a difference. It's allowed me to get things right. And as we all know, performance is kind of important in the job, and getting things right makes it easy upon everybody. So having a supervisor or having a team that is willing to work with you on the confirmation, on the getting it right part really matters. And sometimes it can be a bit tiring, I'm sure, for other people, but it helps me do what I need to do. And that helps me do what I need to do for them.
That's great. That's great. Thank you, Ben. Thank you. And Ryan's just saying you were spot on, Ben. Thank you so much. This is Chris here. Any time for a couple of questions? Any time for questions?
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So,
Hello, hello, panelists, as well as Christopher. I was hoping you all could share some tips for one, how to best communicate with those who are deaf and deafblind, as well as some tips for being culturally competent to the deaf and deafblind community.
does anyone on the panel want to take a stab at that question? Go ahead, Ben.
This is Ben. It really depends on the person you're talking to, because, for example, I can have a one-on-one conversation with the person very well. If you split that up to like 4 people with the speaker shifting, I start to lose things. If you shift that to a crowd with lots of different questions, I will lose many things. I am also somebody who can flip easily between a hearing world and a deaf world, or a literate world and a visual world, because of things like language deprivation or just simple properties of how we each are. There may be people who may not understand straight English or may not understand a written text very well. So you kind of have to try each thing and see how well it succeeds and how much access to language, communication, and information is getting through. So you're trying to check those 2 things. Thank you, Chris and Rachel, for developing that metric. So you're looking to try a multi-spectrum thing and then go where the flow is easiest. It's going to take time. It's going to take interaction. It's going to take communication. Hey, did that work for you? Or are you noticing that the work product matches what you're expecting? And so for people who have atypical sign, for people who may have deaf blindness, or people who are deaf plus, you may have to try all different things and again.
Thanks, Ben. Brenda?
Hey, Ben, I agree. And I think one of the tips for hearing people is to ask, never assume. The tip is ask how you could be heard. There are different kinds of communication etiquette to follow, like tap on the shoulder if the person's not responding to you. That happened to my husband, by the way, when I was shopping on the line. He was reading the magazine because the person in front of him had a cart filled with food. And he thought, you got to take time. So he's sitting there reading the magazine. Well, so happened that the cashier actually plowed through and made it. So it was my husband's turn. Well, he was so busy reading the magazine, the lady behind him was screaming at him, "Sir, move, it's your turn." And I went to get a food that I forgot to put on the counter. I said to the lady, geez, if you think the yelling at him is that they respond, may give you a clue that he's deaf. Tap him on the shoulder, tell him gently, please move. He would say, thank you. Deaf people, we don't bite. We bark, but we don't bite. So for hearing people, don't assume, ask. That's the tip.
Thanks, Brenda. Thanks. Yeah, go ahead, Nathan.
So from my personal experience with my supervisor being so supportive of me completely from day one, When I started working with him, again, he didn't know anything about deaf community, deaf culture, ASL, and it really took time to develop that relationship with him. And he was always really good about asking questions, saying, are you okay with this? Does that work? Do you need this? We'll give you whatever it is you need. I never felt like there was some hard boundary. I felt like he was always very open. And I feel like I have built, because of that, a really good relationship. I can be honest and say, hey, there were some things I didn't really get during that meeting. Do you mind getting together with me just really briefly after so we can debrief and sort of catch up? And so he's really been very accommodating for me in that way. So for all of you, if you're in a position where you're supervising deaf, hard of hearing, deaf-blind individuals, please don't be afraid to just ask direct questions, develop that relationship, and be open. And again, it goes both ways. You want each of you to feel comfortable, right, in your work relationship.
Thank you. Thank you for those answers and responses. I know time has run out, unfortunately, but I want to thank my 3 panelists for being here today and providing your feedback to our audience. But yes, time is out. So again, thank you so much. And I hope that the audience feels like they learned something and gained more information and enlightened today. Thank you all. Feel free to come up at the end of the presentation to talk with the panelist or myself. Thanks so much, everyone.